tread lightly. This is the ominous warning from Breaking Bad's Walter White when his law enforcement brother-in-law Hank discovers that he is in fact the drug kingpin Heisenberg. And Hank has searched after this kingpin for over a year now, and he's risked life and his family's lives and his career, and he finally finds him across the dinner table. This is a man who was like a brother to him, who is the father of his niece and his nephew, and here he is in front of him. He puts the pieces together and he confronts Walt. He says, "I don't even know who you are. I don't even know who I'm talking to." And Walt responds, "If that's true, if you don't know who I am, then maybe your best course would be to tread lightly." My text for today is Job chapters 38 through 40, where God speaks out of the whirlwind. I have to confess that for the 10 or so years that I've been a believer, I never much liked this passage. Here's the reason why. The passage is supposed to be the grand crescendo of the book, and many pastors and theologians and Bible scholars lift it up as this wonderful vision of God's power and sovereignty that is an answer to the problem that the beginning of the book of Job presents. That this is this great offer of hope for this problem of suffering, and I just don't buy it. For me, God's response to Job seems like nothing more than a show of power meant to dominate. And faced with the experience of life's injustice, when we plainly see the wicked rule and the righteous suffer, God answers only, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? And do you have an arm like God's, and can your voice thunder like his?" It's as if Job seeks out the God he loves, and he's left saying, "I don't know who you are. I don't even know who I'm talking to." And it's as if God answers, "If you know that my power is true, and if you truly don't know who I am, then maybe your best course is to tread lightly." The central problem we have here concerns justice. Faced with the suffering of the innocent, how does God respond? Is God's response nothing more than, "What you see as injustice is not injustice because I have the power, and therefore I define justice"? If that's the case, God's response is hardly extraordinary for us, right? I mean, this is just par for the course of human leadership throughout history. Whoever has the power determines what is true, what is just, because they will simply force their opposition into submission. So what are we to think here? Is there hope for sovereignty without forced submission? Is there hope for dominion beyond domination? So let's get the lay of the land of our passage here. The book of Job begins with an affirmation of Job's blamelessness and uprightness, followed by this interesting scene in the heavenly council of God. Here I'll read Job 1, verses 6 through 12. It says, "One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and the adversary, the Satan, also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, 'Where have you come from?' Satan answered the Lord, 'From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it.' Then the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil.' 'Does Job fear God for nothing?' Satan replied. 'Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.' The Lord said to Satan, 'Very well then, everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger.' Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord." This is the word of the Lord. Yeah. So what we have here is a case study for what is called theodicy, which is basically how we answer the dilemma of our experience of evil in the suffering of the innocent, balanced with God's goodness and justice and power. There are three premises that we have here that we have to hold on to understand the book of Job. That God is powerful, sovereign, that God is just, and that Job is innocent. Here's the classic dilemma. If the innocent suffer, God must not be just or must not be powerful enough to bring about that justice. The problem for Job and later his friends is that their theology cannot fathom the suffering of the innocent. They share a theology of what's called temporal retribution, which means just that God punishes those who are wicked and gives material blessing to those who are righteous. But the innocent Job faces the suffering, and it plunges him not only into the misery of loss and disease, but into the darkness of a broken theodicy. We find Job right in the middle of this quagmire in chapter 3. He upholds his own integrity, his innocence, but suffering has shattered his world. Job says, "May the day of my birth perish. That day may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May darkness overtake it, and the darkness of death claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm its light." Catching to the language right here? Does the language recall anything to you right here? Maybe let there be light, and the Spirit hovered over the waters. Job is so deep in despair that he renounces creation here, including his own. The God he thought was good and just and powerful is only powerful at this point. I think Job feels dominated. What are his options here? Later on, when his three friends come to pile on in his time of need, Job calls them poor comforters. Job begs for empathy. "Have pity on me," he says in chapter 19, "for the hand of God has struck me." Man, I hate being dominated. Growing up, my parents both worked 40-plus hour weeks, and it was just me and my brother at home, and we shared a bedroom, so we pretty much spent all our time together, and we were in Midland, Texas, and it gets over 100 degrees over the summers, and you know what, if the blood doesn't boil outside, it's going to boil inside the house too, so we had our plenty of fights and everything. But here's the thing, he's almost 4 years older than me, and he always had 50 or 60 pounds on me, and you know, we just had this really small world, and we were the only two ones in it. Really, I mean, my parents are just gone so much, and to really ask for any help from them or anything would just be to bring about consequences that I didn't want to deal with either. But I really didn't have a say. It was either do what my brother wanted to do or be pummeled. My options were very limited. It's interesting now, I still really like sports and competition and things, or even, you know, I've noticed even in conversations, if I'm having some kind of argument or debate of some sort, I hate being dominated. I mean, I can deal with losing, but if someone just has the complete upper hand on me, I get this feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it just takes me back there to the point where I just feel like I'm a child, just kind of sitting in the corner of my room, wondering what I'm even going to be able to do here. I think Job's stomach aches far worse than mine. He's lost so much and his options are so limited. But Job holds on. In chapter 9, Job really grasps for straws here. He searches the heavens for an arbiter, someone who can make his case before God. But he knows that God alone can arbitrate. And so Job desperately pleads for a hearing before his abuser, his arbiter. And we find ourselves in chapters 38 through 40 at the beginning of a showdown. The final speaker before God arrives is this mysterious character, Elihu, who shows up just in time to rebuke Job and serve as a ringside announcer for God's entrance. In the red corner, wearing the red and white whirlwind, the almighty, the omnipotent, the utterly transcendent God. And Job well knows the danger he's in. Can you feel the hair stand up on the back of his neck? Can you feel the goosebumps rise between the itching sores? Job knows the danger. God has the power to dominate him. He reasons in chapter 9, if I summoned him, he would crush me with a storm. Can you feel him cringe? Can you feel him cringe as the storm comes to end his misery? But the storm doesn't crush him. Instead, God speaks. Brace yourself, God says. Did you measure out the earth? Did you set its foundations? Can you summon light for the dawn? Can you fathom the depths of the sea? Can you tell the waves where to break? Brace yourself, God says. Is your arm as powerful as mine? Can your voice boom thunder? Taken on their own, these rhetorical questions seem like a vulgar display of power, meant only to dominate Job into submission. But here's the difference. I think what is the key for this passage. When I've read these chapters in the past, I heard them explained or preached. They're set up as a conclusion to the wager at the beginning of the book, but I'm not sure these are a solution to this dilemma of theodicy for Job's temporal retribution. What if this is not the case? What if we read these chapters not as a conclusion, but as a new beginning, as an alternative theodicy? To see this alternative, we'll have to look at the whole of God's speech, what he's saying between these moments that just seem like a show of power. I think it's more than just a show of power, but a redefinition of power itself. Beginning in 38, God establishes divine power, yes, but what does this power look like? God is shown providing water for lands that seem desolate, that no one cares for. God boasts in verses 39 through 41 of the power not to hunt the lion, but to provide for the lioness and her cubs. Take a look for a moment as God shows Job a cosmic montage of creation. The wild donkey, the ox, the ostrich, the horse, the hawk. These amazing creatures are powerful and graceful and stunning. Even the behemoth, this hulking beast that has no master, God could approach them with the sword, could force them into submission, but God doesn't. Each of these wondrous creatures are powerful, capable of causing chaos and destruction and suffering, but God will not dominate them, will not destroy their freedom. This is the alternative theodicy. Why do the innocent suffer? Job's friends say they don't, they can't, that God dishes out suffering only to those who are wicked, and whoever suffers must be wicked. From the ash heap, God shows Job a glimpse of justice and power beyond his wildest imagination. Why do the innocent suffer? Because God allows the creation to be, to act, this freedom to be on their own. God delights in this myriad creatures and ecosystems of the cosmos. There's this grand complexity to this huge bit of creation, and God respects those things that he's created. There are boundaries to these, but God allows them the dignity to live and be with freedom. Gustavo Gutierrez calls this chaos that is controlled but not destroyed by God. God is just, but this justice is limited by what Gutierrez calls God's gratuitous love for creation. This is dominion beyond domination. So what does this all mean for Job and for us who experience this evil and the suffering of the innocent, just like Job? The first thing I think we can take away is what faith is not, and that is what scholar William Brown calls piety without protest. If each of us have this freedom and this dignity to live, then those who are weak and poor or powerless are not despised by God, as Job's friends would have us think. But in fact, God has a particular interest in their lives. If power is shown ultimately as gratuitous love, then dominion beyond domination extends to every sphere of existence. The same dignity God maintains for the fantastic creatures of the cosmos extends to every human creature as well. Those who are oppressed, who are abused and tortured, have a claim to complaint, to cry out to God for justice. That cry will not fall on deaf ears. This reminds me of this beautiful argument from Dr. David Garland's commentary on a passage from Matthew 5:39, which has a parallel in Luke 6. In this, Jesus teaches us not to resist those who do evil, but if someone hits us on the right cheek, turn the other also. Does this mean we should accept our domination, though? Dr. Garland says no. He points out that for someone to strike you on the right cheek, assuming that they are right-handed, which most were, quite a few are now, they would have to hit you with the back of their hand. And to be backhanded, especially in society at that point in time, was a sign of degradation, that you were lower than. You would not hit somebody that was equal to you with the back of your hand, but with the open side. Therefore, to be hit on the right cheek and then to give them the other also would be to look them in the eye. If they're going to slap you again, they will slap you as an equal. I think God calls for the same act for Job. Job may feel dominated, but God lifts him up, puts him on his feet, and invites him to take part in God's dominion, a dominion of justice, but also of gratuitous love, a dominion beyond domination. Pray with me. God, thank you for the time to look at this intriguing passage from Job. We ask forgiveness for the false reading, the false theology that we run through at times. And God, we thank you for the opportunity to praise you, not because we have to, but because we can. Amen.